The relationship between Israel and Iran is becoming more and more tenser every year. Between the countries are actually engaged in a proxy war in Syria and Palestine. Israel is trying to disrupt Iran's development of nuclear weapons, and Iran's top officials are calling for the destruction of Israel. In fact, this wasn't always the case, and there were even alliances between the countries. We're going to talk about why Iran hates Israel so much and how the countries have become enemies. The relationship between Iran and Israel goes back the origins of the latter. Initially, Iran became skeptical about the creation of a Jewish state and was against the partition of Palestine. In the 1950s, there was already a rapprochement, and the countries actually became allies. Iranian authorities were hesitant to recognize Israel for some time, but after Turkey recognized Israel, Iran did so as well. Both countries are generally pro-Western, and Iran also supports Israel against the Arabs. In the Six-Day War, Iran sympathized with Israel. Conflicting relations began after the Islamic Revolution in Iran in the 79th year. Ruhollah Khomeini, who became the head of Iran, even before he came to power, criticized the Shah for his rapprochement with the Americans and with Israel. The latter was called the enemy of all Islam and Muslims, and Shah Pahlavi was accused of trying to turn the country into an American military base because of the rapprochement with Western countries. When the religious radicals came to power, the harsh attitude towards Israel itself changed. Since then, relations have been strained, and Iran is sponsored by various anti-Israeli groups like Hamas, based in Palestine. It is interesting that Israel itself in '79 was in no hurry to break off relations with Iran and tried to maintain a favorable relationship. Israel needed them to maintain a balance in the Middle East. In fact, there were quite interesting episodes of rapprochement between Israel and the Republic of Iran. These took place during the Iranian War in Iraq. During that war, the Western world decided to support Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, and began to supply arms to Iraq. However, the United States also secretly supplied weapons to Iran. Interestingly, Israel supported the latter initiative because it feared an Arab victory in the region, which would have led to complete domination of the Middle East and the risks of the disappearance of Israeli statehood. It was through Israel that such supplies went, and even Israel itself began to send its own weapons, with the condition that the Americans compensate them. This is quite an interesting episode in Iranian-Israeli relations, but such cooperation was ad hoc, and relations continued to deteriorate in the 1990s. Iran is helping the anti-Israeli forces in the Lebanon War. It is about financing. The proxy war between the countries is taking place in Syria, where Iran has launched its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps supporting Assad. But Iran's ongoing support for the Palestinians also comes from Iran. The first reason is the Islamization of Iran. As a result of the revolution, the Shah's monarchical regime was replaced by the Islamic Republic, where the spiritual leader Khomeini became the head of the country. In the 90s, relations began to deteriorate, especially after Mahmoud Ahmadinejad became head of Iran in 2005. The Iranian authorities began to equate Zionism with fascism and racism, to deny the Holocaust, and even to reissue the Protocol of the Elders of Zion. The well-known historical falsification of anti-Semitism was popular in Europe in the early 20th century. In addition, the conflict was sparked by the accusation that Iran was going to build nuclear weapons. Israel has repeatedly attacked nuclear facilities and even assassinated energy specialists. So let's examine why the regime change in Iran has led to such a sharp rejection of Israel. The issue of nuclear weapons is also of great concern to both sides. Iran has essentially become a theocratic republic of the Shiite type with correspondingly rigid orders. At that time, practically all the states with a predominantly Muslim population were hostile to Israel. As already mentioned, Khomeini regarded the Jews as enemies of Islam and Muslims. In many ways, the contradictions between the faiths have been building up for centuries, which is why attitudes had deteriorated so sharply. A separate topic was the question of Palestine. Reza Pahlavi embarked on the westernization of Iran, so there were no strict religious restrictions. Women could wear any clothes and be educated. By the way, the level of education of women was higher than in many Western countries, and they had all the rights and freedom. Islam was of secondary importance to the Iranian government, so the contradiction of Islam and Judaism did not bother the Shah. The second reason is the Palestinian question. question of protecting the Palestinians also came to the fore, only after Iran became an Islamic republic and was generally perceived in conjunction with the question of faith. It was with the assistance of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that Hezbollah was established in Lebanon, which borders with Israel, and Islamic Jihad also became supported by Iran in the 1980s, during the uprisings against Israel. Israel itself came to be seen in general as an imperialist and colonialist power in the Middle East, which suppresses Muslims in Palestine. This was the context in which the Iranian authorities began to perceive. By that time, some Arab countries had already moved toward reconciliation. There was every reason in principle to do so, given the regular wars between Israel and the Arabs and because of the displacement of the Palestinians. The third reason was anti-Iraqanism and hatred of the Shah. Anti-Americanism, again, was evident in the Khamenei, even before they came to power. The Islamic regime was quite wary of Americans because of the displacement of traditional values and the westernization of the country. Of course, the attitude toward Shah himself was also negative. Relations were further deteriorated by the fact that during the Iran-Iraq War, the United States supported Saddam Hussein for fear of radical Islamists in the Middle East, although in fact it was Iran that became a victim in this war. Hussein wanted to annex the oil-rich Iranian province of Khuzestan with its Arab population. This state of affairs was also reflected in the attitude towards Israel. The latter was the main ally of the United States in the Middle East. The accusations against Iran that the Islamic Republic is trying to build nuclear weapons appeared in the 90s. Such accusations were first voiced by George Bush, including Iran in the so-called Axis of Evil. Because of this, Iran was put under additional sanctions and began to call for the signing of a nuclear deal, thanks to which the nuclear facilities of Iran will actually be under the constant control of international bodies. As for Israel, Israel has become extremely concerned about this issue, so attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities have become a regular occurrence, as has the assassination of Iranian nuclear expert. The Iranian authorities deny any attempt to build such weapons, but the paradox is that Israel itself does not publicly possess such weapons. The nuclear issue leads to constant escalation between the parties. In general, many have noted that the confrontation between Iran and Israel has a purely ideological context, and the countries, if the regimes soften, can easily become closer. The countries do not even have common borders or territorial. They do not have any disputes over oil or access to the sea. There are no natural reasons for the conflict, of only ideological enmity. To summarize, it is worth noting that between Iran and Israel were quite close relations before the Islamic Revolution in Iran. After the change of power between the parties, the Palestinian question, the question of faith, as well as anti-Americanism became predominant in Iran. The issue of nuclear weapons has also become central since the turn of the century. Consequently, relations have become hostile, and the countries have even waged proxy wars between them. Thank you for watching this video.